Sick, as they say.
I know, sick.
Sick, so sick.
Is that working?
Yeah.
I think it's working, Alan. Brilliant.
Well, look at us at the age we are, being able to use technology. It's a miracle.
Well, to be fair, I've got an assistant. Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Stay on Your Bike podcast. This is going to be an incredible podcast for me because growing up as a kid, Alan was a huge hero of mine and a massive part of my childhood with what he did in BMX, from having his bike shop to the Robinson bikes, the Talker bikes, and all the race teams that I looked up to that he ran, as well as his incredible results himself. So, everybody, I welcome you to Alan Woods.
Thank you, Nigel. It's an honour to be here on this podcast. I haven't done too many of these things, and there's always hopefully new stuff that we can drag up. So yeah, my name is Alan Woods. I'm from Wigan in Greater Manchester. Used to be in Lancashire, but they've moved us into Greater Manchester in the northwest of England. And I left school at 16 years of age, went to California, became the distributor for a number of BMX brands, and ran a shop, Alan's BMX. And 43 years later, I'm still doing exactly the same thing.
Unbelievable. Brilliant. Well, let's get into it, Alan. So, first of all, let's just start off with, where you grew up. I know a lot of this, but if you could tell everyone, where you grew up, how biking came into your life, with your motocrossing and then BMX and stuff. And I think that'll be a really, really good, interesting start.
Yeah, I guess. I suppose for all of us, I was watching, your podcast there just recently, and very similar. I was just, drawn to bikes, and for me, that was like, a rally chopper. I had a Mark 1, a Mustard Mark 1, and it's hard to say. I suppose we look back on those times with really rose-tinted spectacles, but like, man, you you go back to like somewhere like 1973, for example, the Mark 1 chopper's out, David Bowie's in the charts, Mud, Sweet. Yeah, it was a really, really magical time, those, and I was like, 8, 9, 10, just amazing. Loved, riding my bike, Marvel comics like the Hulk and Fantastic Four, loved all that stuff. So I had a real passion for a lot of things that stuck with me. And then I think, my dad had done Speedway, rode for Bellevue Aces. Yeah. So I think he wanted to get me involved in motorsport. And I think we were looking at getting a kart. Three Sisters wasn't there then, the karting circuit, but like, and then we lived in Golborne, which is in between Wigan and Warrington. And then we, in fact, just a second, I'll see if I can get it. Hang on a sec. Yeah. Sorry, I should have lined this up beforehand.
Wow.
So Ralph Venables wrote this book in 1975 called Schoolboy Scrambling.
Yep.
And the paper, I'm assuming the Daily Mail or the Sun, not the Guardian, basically took elements that was in the book and did like a 2-page spread in the paper, like a whether it was a paid promo thing or whatever, I don't know. And we saw this in back end of 1975 after the book had come out, and we were like, this is the shit that we should be doing. And yeah, and it had, in the back it had like all the clubs, and you could, hang on a second. Yeah, it had like the addresses of all the clubs.
Oh wow.
So, and the club secretary, there's no phone number. Yeah. So anyway, we must have written to JC Hopkins at Craigmore, Handley Hill, Winsford, Cheshire.
Yeah.
And he or she sent us like a Northwest Schoolboy Motorcycle Club membership pack. And yeah, so then there was a race, and it was at it was in Cheshire, near Nantwich. Wasn't at Atherton Hall. But basically, well, and we'll have to get a bike. So I was 11. So I was
Yeah.
in the intermediates. Intermediates didn't classify your ability. It was just purely what the age group was
Yeah.
called,
Yeah.
11 to 13 or whatever. And we went to Doug Hacking Motorcycles in Bolton
Yeah.
and bought kind of like this bike, which is like a Kawasaki KE or KM90. And the
Right.
class was a 100cc class. But this bike, you can't really tell that much from this picture, is actually like a trail bike.
Yeah.
So it came with a headlight and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
And although it had high mud guards, it wasn't a motocross bike.
Yeah.
So we went to Dougie's in Bolton and said, "Oh, we want a bike, and it needs to be up to 100cc. What have you got?" And they said, "Oh, we've got this. It'll be perfect." We're like, "Okay, well, that'll do then." And it was just like that, except it was red.
Yeah.
But they took the lights off it and put number plates on it, and I was like, oh, okay. And we were running out of time because the race was coming up. Like it was in
Yeah.
like next weekend.
Sure.
So this is on the Saturday. I mean, how mad is this? You can't even. I've never ever seen scrambling on motocross ever. It never been on TV. There was no YouTube. I'd never been to a race. I had no idea what, all I'd bought the book by then.
Well,
So I had the pictures, the same as when you got BMX Plus or BMX Action or whatever. So
yeah.
basically, you just had the photographs and you were like, it must be like this. But I'd never actually seen it. And obviously, with hindsight, you'd go to an event and you'd watch and blah, 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 blah. But no. So we bought the bike and went to, and I got all the gear.
Yeah.
I had gold leathers, proper leather, gold. I mean,
No way.
with like a brown stripe up them and all good stuff, like decent boots and probably a Stadium 9 helmet, which everybody had, and the gloves with the rubber
Yeah.
fingers, all that stuff. Took it home. This is the Saturday. The race is the following Sunday. Like,
And what did your dad do then, Alan? What was your dad's sort of job then?
well, we had the place that we had at Hindley. We had that place then. So we had Low Mill Lane then. So he was doing car MOTs and repairs.
Right. Okay.
Repairs and MOTs. So
Yeah.
we already had that, that building was already there. My dad owned it. So, that was that, and that allowed us to be able to kind of afford to get the bike.
Yeah.
So we bought the bike, took it back, and my cousin, John Plant, I think he got a bike and he was on about racing. So on the Sunday, we had a Morris van. Do you remember those little Morris vans, like a pickup? But it wasn't a pickup; it had a roof on it. I mean, it was like you wouldn't be able to fit a motocross bike in it now, but because the bike was near low, the handlebars had just fit in. So we took it to Newtonley Willows, to just a field behind some houses, which is, as you know, that's what no one used to come out and like call the police and like you got an as.
No.
But by the same token, like these kids nowadays with the surons and the masks on, we didn't go fucking wheeling up and down the street in, we just rode around and people allowed you to do that and it wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be getting some Suron hate now, aren't I? Yeah. So the night before I went, I got the bike. I was like, gears? What are gears? I must have known what gears are because I had a chopper 3-speed, right? So it's like down for first, up for second.
Yeah.
So I'm doing down for first. So I was remembering all this. And then we got to the field. My cousin came out. I sat on the back. He rode it around, and then he said, "This is what you need to do. This is how you start it. You press this thing down, and
Yeah.
I think it had an on-off switch. You turn it on, press this thing down, choke." And told me how to work it and how the gears worked. And then I rode around the field 4 times. Stopped, spoke to my dad, and said, "Yeah, that's it. We know how to ride it. Sick." And then took it home, cleaned it off. And then the following Sunday, we went to Kinderton Hall Farm, just off junction 18 of the M6.
Oh yeah.
So we turned up in the Morris Minor like van, and other people are parked on the field, and that's it. That was the first. I didn't even know. I'm like, people were putting the bikes into the paddock. I'm like, is it not going to get stolen? You just hadn't got a. And a lot of people were on trail bikes. A few people had like, RMs or TMs, like as shown on the cover there, which were specific motocross bikes. But a lot of people were on trail bikes, either because the availability wasn't great, or you couldn't afford them, or whatever the reason was. And of course, at that time, although it wasn't really cheap, it was a lot more affordable than it became. And went out, 3 motos, went to the start, I was at the back or whatever. And then in the third race, like, it rained. And the back wheel was just going round and round and round. So you can't really tell from this picture, but like, it only really had, like, it didn't really have motocross tires on it. So they weren't road tires, but they were like,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
trail tires, really. Do you know what I mean? And of course, as soon as the knobs got full of mud, it wouldn't clear. And I was just going and changing gear, and the thing was just
still there,
just spinning round. So anyway, I pushed it off. Somebody helped me push it off the side of the track, brought it back to the van, and I said, "Listen." They said, "Oh, what happened? Did you fall off?" I'm like, "No." I said, "Man, there's something wrong. The tires aren't right." And I remember, like, just things that you remember from a kid. And my dad said, "Well, I don't know what the problem is. The proper trials tires. We didn't even know what sport we were doing."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, the proper, all right, the proper trials tires. Sick.
That's brilliant.
So, that was quite funny. But nowadays, that would never happen, would it? You go, even BMX racing, you can't even do a race. You've got to go on a coach. You've got to go on a coaching thing, haven't you, for like,
it's crazy. It's
four
crazy.
months or something, which is cool, and I love all that, and how the sports become more and more professional. But if you said to somebody today that you'd be competing like in motocross or BMX, and you've never ever even seen it before, it just is bizarre. So anyway, we were, after that, we realized the bike was not the right thing, and I was spoiled, wasn't I? So my mum and my sister went down to Vale Onslow in Birmingham and bought me a brand new RM100.
Brilliant.
And
is that what they were then at RM100s?
Yeah. So, and that was because it was like TMs up to 75, and then 76, the RM100 came out. They had a downpipe, and we raced that all season with Northwest Schoolboys and a couple of other clubs. And then in 77, we started to go in further afield, and then I had a new RM100B, and then some of the pictures that I've sent you probably from then. And then that's how that kind of dovetails into how we got into business, because we had the garage through the wholesalers, or because we had a bricks and mortar motor business. We got NGK spark plugs, which for those who've never experienced an old Hercule 2-stroke, you go through a lot of spark plugs with those things, right? And we also had Bel Ray oil. At the time, a lot of oil was caster base like Castrol R, which you might be familiar with, R30 or R40. But by then, synthetic oils were coming out, which you could run at a much leaner ratio than the castor bean oils. So, for example, like the MC1, you're supposed to be able to run that at 100-to-1 ratio. That's 100 parts oil to petrol, whereas traditionally it was like 32-to-1 using the other stuff. So I remember going to a race in Cumbria, and I got some Fablon, or sticky backed plastic for the followers of Blue Peter, and wrote on like NGK spark plugs and just cut the backing off the corners and stuck it on the side of the van. And we sold a couple of spark plugs. And then from then we ended up being one of the first people to have like, I suppose you call it trackside support nowadays, really. So we grew from having just the plugs and the oil to like gear. And then the big thing for us that kind of got us going was Fox air shocks. The same Fox that, well, it's kind of not the same Fox as we know today, but like, the two Fox brothers, one of them ended up with the clothing side, one ended up with the suspension side that we know from mountain bikes. So, and the reason why these were so popular is we bought these bikes, like the RM100, for example, and they were too hard. There were too, you need to buy softer springs for them. And then the kids would then grow, and then you'd have to change it. But because of the air shocks, they were dual stage, so they had like an upper chamber which would pick up like the small bumps, and like the lower chamber which had a bladder inside it that would like the big landings and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So
just like an air fork on a mountain bike now, then.
Well, yeah. So they were well ahead of the time. They were £235 then. So that's how much a custom BMX bike would have been at the beginning of the 1980s. So that was a lot of money. But we sold a lot of them, and they came from a guy called Roland Swimbank in County Durham. Who was a really great bloke, and his son, I've still been in touch with in recent years. So they were the Fox importers. So they had the first Fox, they had the shocks, and then they had the gear and and everything else, and then it ended up changing over the years and blah 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 blah. But yeah, having the Fox, and in fact, one of the pictures I sent you is our van, all painted up in Fox colours, with my 1979 CR125 on the trailer at the back. And that van, my dad just painted it like with a brush. Brush painted it like, red, yellow, orange, like the team colours. And then we wouldn't have had vinyl graphics. Must have had some guy around to paint it on the side. But we had a big Fox head sticker on the front of the bonnet. So yeah, I guess, and I'm still at school, so I was involved in this, and it was under Alan's, so I was like 11, so 12, 13, so I would, pay the invoices at the weekend. I was 13. It's like bizarre, isn't it?
Crazy.
And then, that built up and built up and built up.
Did your mum and dad push that, or is that something?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't have done this without their support. I mean, they were incredible. I think a lot of families would just go, "You can't do that," or "You can't do this." They were totally like, "Whatever, let's do it." And then in 1980, through Roland with Fox, we were going to California, and we said to Fox, any chance we spend a lot of money with you, Roland? Any chance of getting a bike sorted, like when we go to California? Anyway, he goes, "Oh, I'll have to see. So he must have spoken to them, and I don't think they were super happy, because like, who's this kid? Like, he's not even. I mean, I think I was good, but I wasn't going to be a Dave Thorpe or anything. Do you know what I mean? I think by the end of the time we ended up in the schoolboys, I had like 500 trophies or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So I'd always finish like top 3, top 4. Didn't win outright that much, but I did.
Yeah, you did great.
And so Roland hooked us up with Fox. So when we got to we flew to Los Angeles. We drove up to Northern California near San Jose, a place called Campbell, where Fox were, and I got all kitted out in gear and everything. And then they said, yeah, the race is at such a place. And one was at Hangtown, the old Hangtown track where they have the national now. I went to the Hangtown race on the Saturday. This is 1980. So Donny Cantalupi, who rode for Fox, who just signed for Yamaha Factory, so they still had his bike. So we turn up at the race on the Sunday. The Fox box vans there, just is like, I guess it's like having like one of the big trailers today. And yeah, I've got Danny Cantalupi's bike, haven't I? Because he's like left to ride for the factory. Yeah, and it was amazing. So I did the race there that Sunday, and we did another one the following week as well. So that was all through Roland kind of hooking us up, really. Do you know what I mean? And we were on Hondas that year, and then we came back and bought a Yamaha, and that's what I was racing in the old bike class a few years ago. I can't seem to get away from anything. It's like the talker thing. It's like I'm stuck in some like really bad episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like
because it's
never moves on.
No, but it's a reason for that. It's because it was like super good fun, and you know, as you get older, I'm the same. Like I want to keep that experience going and bring it back, because there's been lots of other things in between, but it was a really good time in your life. So why not? You know, like you say,
I
you only
know,
live once.
yeah. I'm joking, really, but yeah, it's great to it's great to do that. And then so that was 1980, and then
And
obviously by then, like BMX was starting to get on the radar a bit, wasn't it? You know.
and sorry, just to ask, did you go to California just to race the motorbike, or did you go on holiday and that was part of it?
I think we just raced the motorbike, really, and we
Wow.
must have gone to Disneyland.
Yeah.
But I remember going to San Francisco and like not going to San Francisco. You know, we never went to like the Bay or Hayton Asbury or anything like that.
Okay.
You know, we drove over the Golden Gate Bridge because I've got a photograph of it, but we never, I never, you know, I don't remember doing any touring. I don't remember going to like Venice Beach or any of that, you know, stuff. We really just, it was around the racing, really, do you know what I mean?
And why did you want to go to those particular races? Were they just iconic races at the time and you fancied going?
Well, just like with BMX, Nige, you know, California, it was everything, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That was the place. That's where, you know, David Bailey had come out of, and Mike Bell and blah, 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 all these, you know, and then obviously Ron Lachine and all these amazing riders all came from, it was just all California. So that was like the center of the, if you were involved in like action sports, as they call it now,
Yeah.
that was the center of the universe. Now you see these riders, you know, BMX or motocross from Indiana and all these other places. I mean, obviously, there were riders from other states then, you know, Jimmy Wiener or whatever, but it was all California. That's what that's where the magazines were. So
Yeah.
they covered all the riders and all the races, and LA Coliseum and all that. That was just it, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was an amazing trip. And just before that, actually probably 78, I remember someone showing me, I think it must have been BMX Plus magazine to race, and I remember it, and it was someone doing like a tabletop just to the flat off a jump, and you know, the bike was just completely horizontal, and I was just like, that looks like fun. And but then it was another couple of years really before, because you know, as you know your history. The UK was a little bit behind mainland Europe when it came to BMX. I don't know why, because you know Gerrit Dus in Holland, and you know Belgium, and even you know even Spain had races before we did, you know, and a national championship. So it wasn't really until, you know, everybody knows all this, I'm sure. It wasn't, you know, until, you know, David Duffield and the Jarvises got involved from a commercial point of view, and then built, you know, Buckmore Park, and then, you know, tried to do a national, did try to successfully put together a national series. So we were a little bit behind. But yes, I was aware of BMX. and then there was
How
a
did you
guy. Oh, go on.
how did you first hear of BMX? Obviously, you were full on with the motocross. How
Well,
did
from
you?
that magazine, and then also there was a guy in Peterborough that used to bring in yellow YZs because the rest of the world, all of the world, not the rest of the world, the majority of the world, the rest of the world. That's America. That's America's arrogance for you, isn't it? The rest of the world, yeah. All of the world, apart from uh, United States of America, Yamahas were white
Yeah.
with red and black graphics, and the colors were like white, red, and blue. However, and I don't know why this is, in America they were yellow with black and white, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, we had white bikes and we wanted yellow ones,
Yeah.
and the people in America had yellow ones, and they wanted the really cool European
White one.
white ones. And what's funny, you'll have seen this a couple of years ago. Chris Moeller made a couple of fit 29-inch bikes, and
Yeah.
he did two. One was like the Euro Yamaha colors, and one was the American colors. So that's how much it's penetrated. It was all the way down to kind of business, really, 40 odd years later. But anyway, this guy in Peterborough also had these BMX bikes, which were called Moto Ones.
Yeah, my friend had one.
Yeah, so they were like, I think they were like red or blue, and they came with matching vinyl snap pads and V bars, and they were okay, So because he had them, I think we bought like 6 off him, and maybe they were about 150, 125 quid. I can't remember, but we sold all those. And then he was also buying Mongoose bikes from Amoco and then re-wholesaling them on. So I guess he was buying them from Amoco and putting 20% on and then selling them to dealers in the motorcycle game.
Was at the time did the Moto One bikes come from America?
No, they would have. I'm guessing they came from the Far East, but I don't know. They were like a cheap bike, like a Pook Murray, which is the other first bike that we saw.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were like, they were like all bird shit welds and stuff. Like, do you know what I mean? They weren't chrome moly and TIG welded or anything like that. I
Yeah.
guess they were like a what you call like a Kmart
Yeah.
bike
Yeah.
now. Really, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a supermarket replica of a BMX bike. Oh, I missed a bit out. Before that, they had these. We went to the motorcycle. You used to have like remember the bike show in Birmingham? You know
Yeah.
how big that used to be back in the day. Well, they had a motorcycle one, didn't they, at Alexandra Palace or somewhere like that in London every year, and it was massive. I mean, I did do the stall there with the people from Fox with Roland
Yeah.
in 1981, I think. I mean, they took a lot of money over that weekend. It was like, because there was no internet, was there?
No.
It was just the same as like when it was the bike show in Birmingham. It's like people just used to go
Yeah.
and carry, you take like 500 quid and you buy a new frame and this and that. That was the same then. And anyway, somebody had a stall there and they had a bicycle, but there was like a motorbike. So it had like a petrol tank.
Oh yeah.
And a big thick seat and the high-rise mud guards and all the thing. And I've researched them a little bit subsequently, and they were made by a company called Greco, Greco. So if you Google it, you might find it. But the ones that we had were branded Wheel King, Wheel Dash King, and that's what it said on the tank. And we ordered one of those. I think we just paid for it up front. You used to do that shit then, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be worried about getting ripped off.
Well.
You just pay up front. Okay. There was no PayPal protection, was there? Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
You didn't need it.
no.
I'm sure people did get ripped. I'm sure people did get ripped off in the 70s, but yeah, we just go, oh yeah, here it is. Here's the money. And then it took ages and ages and ages and ages and ages. Then it came and it was sick. So I rode that opposite the our property where we had the business in Hindley at Low Mill Lane, there was some like rough ground opposite there, which my dad had bought. He was going to build a bungalow on, which he never did. And it has been, when we moved, someone has built a bungalow on it now. But I just used to ride on it. Actually, I had a TY 175.
Wow.
Speaking of the TY thing, and used to pretend I could do trials, but really bad at trial, mate. But I used to ride this Moto One over there, and yeah, it was really good. And again, I've Googled it a few times, and they had massive problems with the front axles snapping. They were undersized, and they used to break. They were hub brakes, so they were pretty cool. And I bought, going back to the shock thing for the RM100, we bought some shocks from Wakeling Ward in Walsall, I think it was, and they became, I'd outgrown them. I must have put some weight on, and they were too soft. So I put them on, they were the right length. So I put them on the Moto One. So I had girling shocks on the Moto One. So I was like fully pimped out with that thing. So that was pre-BMX, and that would have been 1976.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, so I guess that was like, and that was the same time, I don't know when the Grifter came out, but probably 77 maybe. And then, as we all know, before that, everybody had like the tracker bikes, like the racers with the big cow-on handlebars and the knobbly tires. But I didn't have one of those.
No, yeah, I think I'd have got a Grifter in about 78, I imagine.
All I remember about them was those goddamn grips, those plastic, like finned. Yeah,
So hard, weren't they?
I know. Julie's just come back, so
it's all right.
Yeah, so before BMX, it was that. So it was like motocross, the Moto One, motocross, the Wheel King, then the Moto One, and then the guy in Peterborough that hello, the guy in Peterborough who did the motorbike, the Yamaha yellow YZs. He was kind of like putting this margin on for the mongooses, and I think he sent us like the catalog when we're like, wait a minute, he's buying them from this place called Amoco. So I just rang Amoco, and they were like, yeah, I'll send you trade prices. I'm like, 20% cheaper. So anyway.
And where was Amoco based then?
We're in Kent.
Kent.
Yeah, I guess, I did go there. I guess not far from Chatham.
Right.
Butmore Park. And it was so great to see the Jarvises at the Hall of Fame the other year. They've not changed. Obviously, I have, because I was like 16 then, and they must have been in their 30s or 40s or something then. But I can't really say how much we owe to those guys. So many people, the Higginsons with BMX News and everything. And I know it was business, but still, man, to BMX to be able to ramp up like it did from 81, 82, 83, just incredible. So that was, that'll have been 1980 going into 1981. So by then, I don't know when official BMX came out in the beginning of 81, I guess. Maybe the back end of 1980. So I got I bought a copy of BMX Action magazine in 1980 or early 81 with John Cruise on the cover. And that was like a life-changing thing, because anyone watching this used to get the magazines back then. You get the magazine, and actually this is Greystoke, but like, every single picture on every page.
Yeah.
Like there'd be a photograph of like Stu Thompson and Greg Hill coming over a jump, and every single sticker that they had on the number plate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was just like you were, man, if they did like, PhD in BMX, you'd be like,
yeah.
you'd be at like Berkeley now teaching it or something, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You wouldn't, would you, because of the protest? But Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, the magazines were really important. So anyway, that's back end of 1980. So and then we had a motorcycle show, the Northern Motorcycle Show at Bellevue.
Yeah.
At the back end of 1980. I don't know what month exactly, maybe November, December, and it was concrete floor and wooden jumps, and we went there with the team, and I've got some photographs of that.
And what was your team just before you go into that? Why did you stop doing the motocross and then move more into the
Well,
BMX?
yeah, I'm just coming to that
Sorry.
because I don't know, because motocross was always the thing. It was never though like it was going to be like I was going to be Dave Thorpe, and I was okay. And other people who I raced against then, like Kurt Nichol,
Yeah.
they didn't do too bad, did they? Kurt finished second championship many times and only through bad luck that he didn't win it. I don't know. BMX was just so it was exciting, wasn't it? And then that magazine that I got, the one with John Cruise on the cover, I wrote to all the companies in it.
I remember you.
Yeah, I typed it up on like me Olivetti typewriter, and I remember typing it up and going, contacting you from the UK, from Alan's BMX, and blah 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 blah. I remember signing it, President Alan's BMX. And my dad's like, that isn't how it works here, is it? Do you know what I mean? But like, if they want to say that I'm president of Alan's BMX, so be it. Yeah. And I wrote all these letters to these companies, to GT, Robinson, and everyone who had an advert in there that did bikes. Yeah. I sent them a letter, just, typed it up, got the stamps from the post office, posted it off. And this is the back end of 1980. And then a couple of people replied, and one of them was Chuck Robinson. And they only had a little advert in there because Chuck never had any money, a little black and white advert. But obviously, he used to punch above his weight in terms of the riders that he had, which at the time was Scott Clark and, Bobby Woods. And so he always had a really, good eye for, getting good riders on the team. So, and he said, we'd be interested in this and da 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 da. So this is like Christmas, back end of 1980 into 1981. Because we'd already been to California once with the motocross thing, so we kind of knew. And also, talking about California then, whenever you first went, when you first got to LAX and like you came through, you went to baggage claim and you walked out and it was dead warm and smelled different, and it was like really was another world because we didn't have McDonald's like in the UK, did we? No. So it was like it really, and now everything's become homogenized, hasn't it? So Manchester looks like bloody New York, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Everything's everything has become kind of Americanized, hasn't it? But we didn't have, it was bonkers. So myself, Dave Arnold, my mum and my dad, and we didn't take our bikes. They gave us bikes when we got there. So Chuck picked us up from.
Chuck and did you already had a Robinson at that point?
Yeah, we'd got them in February 1981.
Okay.
So I think we got about 12, and Dave had one, Craig Burrows, Jason Ram, the people who were basically became our team.
Yeah.
Had bikes.
Were they basically just your friends that you rode with? Is that how that became your team?
Yeah, because like Dave, I'm still see nearly every day, and Craig Burrows and all that crew were from Ashton and Makerfield, where we built the Three Sisters track eventually. I remember one Saturday, I must have been away with the motorbikes or something, and they said, "Oh, you missed it. These guys came to the shop with these green bikes, and they'd all like painted the bikes green." And I think Dave's mum and dad wouldn't let him have like a Pook Murray, so he bought a Pook Murray, but he just painted it green, like everything, like whether he painted the tires green, but like it was literally just with a brush, and it was this like bright, like Kawasaki green.
Yeah.
They turned up, and then obviously I wasn't there, was I? And then we saw him again the week after, and then that became like the team. And I guess we sold him a bike at discount and gave him some grips, something, I don't know. And that was so in February 1981. I don't know why we did this, but me and my dad drove to Heathrow to pick the bikes up. You know, it's occasionally you've got something in your mind and it's like a photographic memory. And I remember, you know, being there in the van with these frames and these Robinson branded boxes and just thinking, no way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because just before that, we'd done a couple of races like that Wallaby race, and I was supposed to be riding for Kuwahara, and they said, "Oh, we're going to give you a bike," and blah 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 blah. And we were on Redline at that point. We got Mongoose Super Gooses, and then we bought Redline Pro Lines, and then through the same importer.
So you were selling all those brands at that time?
Yeah. But then obviously then we wanted to do our own thing. So that was February. So we got the bikes. And obviously I wrote to Chuck in like November. In the meanwhile, the bikes had come. I don't even know how we even did that. I mean, how would you even know? How would you import them? You couldn't Google earth rate. I was just some things are bizarre, aren't they, man?
Yeah.
I mean, even now doing imports, we've just got these talker frames. Yeah, easy. I mean, we've got Amy grips. I've got talker pads and stems, and we've got some Redline forklifter stems on the way from Don Phipps. It's still not easy now.
No.
So how? Yeah, it was bizarre. So in '81, we went out there to California. Yeah, and you've heard this story before, but it's worth telling. So we arrived there at the at LAX. Chuck's got this like big like American van, you know, with like the round windows in it and Robinson Racing products. And it's like, well, and all the seats inside that like swivel round and all that. Do you know what I mean? I guess kind of like a motorhome, but not set up as a motorhome really.
Yeah.
Which he used to go to the races with. So that was amazing. And took us back to his, and he was either in Canoga Park or Chatsworth, just sort of northwest of Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley. And yeah, we got to his place, his house, and we were like, yeah, anyway, so when are we going like to the factory? And he's like, oh, well, you know, right now I'm just operating out the garage. And we open the garage and there's like 3 frames on the wall. That's it. So.
And where did he get the frames made? Or...
They were made at Boris Dixon's at VDC.
Okay.
And that was always a bane of like Chuck's life, not having manufacturing.
Yeah.
And then, as I'm sure you know, it ended up, he got, you know, Rich Long to make them at GT, and it ended up becoming absorbed by GT like a lot of brands did in the day. So it was always troublesome getting frames. You know, he spoke to Roger Warsham at CW about getting it done. And I don't really know why he didn't, because, so anyway, we get there, it's all good. And he's like, oh, are you guys hungry? We were like, yeah, damn right. No idea what kind of food do they eat. What sort of food do they eat? Like Californians, what, you know, like.
Do you not have a pie?
You know, yeah, pie, chips and gravy. Babby's head, pay wet. So yeah, we went, oh, do you guys like Mexican? Mexicans have got their own food. It was news to us. Like there was no, you couldn't go in Tesco and get old El Paso. It just didn't exist.
No.
It makes us seem so old, doesn't it, Nige?
Yeah.
Jeez. Honestly, like if you'd have said to some, if it was like, if you were on like a quiz show and someone, and one of the questions was like, name 3 Mexican foods, like no one, you chips, like what?
You weren't having a quesadilla when you was 8 in Wigan, were you?
So we went to like Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And like, what do you guys want? We were like, well, we don't know really. You know, you get it and it'll be all good. You know what I mean? So anyway, maybe Dave. Anyway, Chuck was still waiting for his, and ours came. So he came to the table and there were burritos.
Yeah.
So anyway, and it comes wrapped in the, in the Taco Bell paper or whatever.
Yeah.
So we put it out there, put it on the plate or the tray, and just opened it up like this. So opened the paper up, opened all the tortilla up, and a knife and fork. We were just eating like whatever it was, like the minced beef and the refried beans or whatever.
Yeah.
Chuck come back and he was like, "What are you doing?" We're like, "We're having the food." He's like, "No, you do this." And like, all the burrito just bit into it. We were just like, so that's how much of a culture shock
Yeah.
was. It was mad. And then Chuck, geez, I mean, he was amazing. So he was like, "Right, let's get you taken around here." So we got 2 bikes and we went to, I think, La Mirada, maybe. So then in Southern California, you could race every single night.
Yeah.
Twice on Saturday and twice on Sunday.
Yeah.
So we did Devonshire Downs and Van Nuys and Azusa, like every track in Southern California. Rancho San Diego, which is like a legendary downhill track. We did all these races, and in between that, he'd be like, "Yeah, today we're going to Amy. Today we're going to Oakley. Today we're going to go to Vans.
Wow.
We're going to go to BMX Action and meet Bob Osborne.
Yeah.
We'll drive down to Oceanside and see Bob Harrow." And we were just like, it was literally like if he'd have died and gone to like BMX Heaven. It was just, so we went to meet Bob in Oceanside.
And
he
I
had
take it you knew who all of these people were at this point.
yeah,
because of the magazines and dealing with people.
Yeah, and we had Oakley grips and we knew who Amy was and all that. I think we were all Oakley, but at the time Robinson was sponsored by Amy, so we went there. And DJ Scott, who is Flight, who we do Flight pads again now, and that's the same thing. And same Flight have still got all the. I mean, Flight have just done the Talker pads, and they're from the original dies and
Wow.
screens and everything from back then. They've just kept them all. Do you know what I mean? So.
And
So yeah, Chuck took us to all these places.
And because you were bringing in the Robinsons, did you sort of emulate all the parts you rode with what the Robinson team in America rode? Is that how it worked?
Not really, no, because I mean, our bikes then probably had Sagino Maxi-Cross cranks, and we probably had KKT Lightning pedals or MKS BM7s, and we probably had one or a one-piece crank if you couldn't get an alloy 3-piece crank. This is just before flight cranks.
Yeah.
By the way. And we'd have like a Pro Neck stem and an Alina or a Cashew Max seat. So yeah, I guess they were really. Yeah, but I mean, Chuck didn't really have a parts sponsor for any parts on the bikes. They used to use those Matt Hauser finned brake blocks. But really, so Diacomp wasn't so this idea of having like OEM component co-sponsors only really came about with like Diamondback, if you remember.
Yeah.
So if you saw pictures of like Harry Leary or Eddie King, and they would always have like Sagino and SR and Diacomp and all that stuff. So it was all the parts that were on the bikes were co-sponsors for the team. So yeah, so he gave us, loaned us like 2 bikes while we didn't think we should take our own. And I remember, again, just little like shots. I remember like sitting in the back of the van and we must have been stopped somewhere, and I took some Louise Westwell, as she was then. Her dad used to take pictures, and because there hadn't been any races, we had a lot of pictures from Southport Skate Park, and they were like black and white, like large format on this kind of like really weird, grainy stock. And I was showing these to Chuck, and we were doing all these jumps, cross-ups, and we didn't have helmets on. And he was a bit like, he wasn't like really too happy about it. Right. And then we went to the race, like the first race, and we were like doing tricks, because then for us, BMX and tricks, and it was one thing. Freestyle hadn't started, had it? No, really?
No.
So it was all one thing, and there were no freestyle bikes. Bob Harrow hadn't designed the Harrow Freestyler yet. The
No.
closest thing was a Talker with the twin top tube, which is only by accident a freestyle bike.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just yeah, it was bizarre. But yeah, he didn't, and I think he had to kind of sit us down, because I used to be able to do like flat ground 360s without touching the back wheel. Like most people who do a 360 on the flat, you're really doing a 180, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you're putting the other 180 on the back wheel. I just used to be able to kind of go and bunny hop and then just do a 360.
Wow.
And we were just doing those, and he was like, listen, come here. I'm like, what? He's like, listen, you're here to race, not fuck about like with these stupid stunts or whatever you're doing. And we were like, oh, sorry. But to us, we didn't realize there was a difference. Do you know what I mean?
No.
So that was quite funny. And then what else? So yeah, that was amazing. So I've retold this story recently with the Talker thing, and we were like, well, we could do with another brand to be able to do, Robinsons are well and good, but like Robinsons, like, a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, we need like at least an Audi or something, don't we? Do you know what I mean? So he took us to see Steve Johnson, and they were lovely. And I met Doris, his mum, who was running Max, and Doug, his brother, and all that. And I got a talk flight, which we brought back to Partington, which ended up being Mike Pardon's bike. So we got a jersey and pants and a yellow Simpson helmet for Mike. So that was the start of the Talker thing. And
were Talker bikes cheaper than the Robinsons to buy?
Yeah, but not much. I mean, there's been a bit written about this, hasn't there, recently, because of the rebirth of Talker. But John, Steve's dad, and Steve, they were very keen on making the bikes affordable. So they do a high-end chrome molly bike, but they always did because they did like a Torque flight and a Max flight, and the Torque flight had a one-piece crank. At the time, the frames were made only Diamondbacks and Kuwaharas were made overseas. Everything was made, in the US, mostly in California. So they'd build up bikes, and it'd be, they'd make the frame and the fork, and, the rest of the stuff, would come in, Araya rims and Suzuki or Shimano hubs or whatever. And then they could build bikes, and then everything bicycles, which was Howie Cohen, which was Kuwahara, but they were a distributor as well. So they used to sell Talkers, complete Talkers, and Powerlight, and maybe Red Line actually, and obviously definitely Kuwahara. And that's how they made complete bikes out of them. And then as time went on, Steve was very forward thinking. It beggars belief, that they pulled the plug on the thing. But he went to Japan and basically got like the parts kits all in one go. So we bought from a company called Mori in Japan everything apart from a frame fork and a handlebar.
Okay.
And then those parts would come from California, and then we would get the parts, bike kits, components from Japan, and then a dealer would order a Talker 280, 280X, same thing really, and we would just, I don't know, strap them together or tape them together and send them out, and then the dealer would have to assemble them from scratch really, and then it ended up in the end, Steve, we had a bike called a Magnum, which was basically like a Taiwanese version of the 280, but all assembled, just like how they do bikes nowadays, effectively. So yeah, that was the thing with Talker. The idea was to get, and it could have been anybody really, that Chuck took us to. It could have been Powerlight, it could have been CW. Well, maybe not CW because they were high end, but yeah, I don't know, why, I don't know why Talker really, but through that, then we had Max.
Yeah.
So
was Max and Talker the same people?
It was the same company, really.
Yeah.
The units were back to back. So you walked out the back of Talker, and then there was Max. So Max was Doris, Steve's mum, and Doug, Steve's younger brother, and Harold, Magruder, industry legend that we all know and love. So that was Max. So we got Max as well as a bonus, and that was just because that was part of Talker, and the Max name comes from an advert, doesn't it? And they've been reusing it recently, and the Talker ad was like to the max. So when they wanted to do a clothing company, which really at the time, who did pants like Bill Walters, JT, there wasn't a lot of competition, so that was really forward thinking for them to do an apparel brand, because they did. And then they had like Mickey Lundy on racing. You remember those ads with like Mike Miranda when he was still on CW, and Tommy Brackens when he was on Powerlight and stuff, and obviously maybe Dave Marietti on Talk or so. If you look back on those ads, and I know Steve did used to pay a lot of money to the advertising agencies to create that stuff, but it really was, they really were punching above the weight. Because if you look at like Diamondback, which was Centurion Bicycle Company, they were a big company with like shareholders and shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Talker was literally just the Johnson family. Robinson was just Chuck.
Yeah.
GT was just Gary Turner and Rich Long.
Yeah. Yeah.
As the owners, right? And Roger Walsh and CW and Boris Dixon and Patterson's.
Yeah. But to me as a kid, not knowing all this, the business side of things that you were dealing with, they were the cooler brands over Diamondback and stuff to me.
Yeah, but I've got a lot of respect for what Diamondback and Mongoose, can't say enough about Mongoose, because those bikes, we don't have an equivalent today. Those brands were still aspirational, but their product was affordable.
Yeah.
So what would that be like? I don't know. A Volkswagen maybe would be a best way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like, a car for the people. Probably isn't that now. Not what it was originally designed to be, but it's something that was like, affordable, but it was still, you weren't buying something that was shit.
Yeah.
And Mongoose and Diamondback. I mean, a Mongoose Super Goose sold for £200, so they were cheaper than a higher end bike, and they were good. And those are the bikes that all the team rode. Ruffle, that's what all Pete Middleton, that's what everybody rode. They didn't work on special bikes.
Yeah.
But whereas nowadays there's no equivalent to that. You either buy like, a supermarket type bike, or really, even if you're buying like a cheaper Fit or something, they're still not relatively that cheap. I suppose they are now because of post-COVID issues, but if things were like normal, which they're not, you'd have to choose. And again, just listening to, your podcast where you're like, the grifter, yeah, man, that's the shit. And then you see a BMX bike, you're like, hang on a minute, like, do you know what I mean? And it was a little bit like that. So we were lucky really to be able to have that. And I think, having that motocross, and if you look at the pictures from, should have got better organized, shouldn't I really? Pictures of official BMX from back in the day, like number 2 with Dave Arnold on the cover. And let me just go and, have you made a tea? Oh, lovely. I'm not going to have a tea break. I'm just going to go and see if I can find this magazine cover, because it really illustrates what I'm talking about and how it enabled us to be able to transition from motocross and really get a step ahead in BMX. We kind of, we cheated really, but I'll just see if I can find the magazine. I'll give you 2 seconds. Oh, well, listen, I'll send you this picture because I can't find it.
It's all right.
But let's pretend it was here on the screen, right? And maybe with the modern technology that can happen in post-production, yeah.
Okay.
So one of the first races we did was at Southport at the beginning of 1981. This is maybe February 81. This is the cover of official BMX. And this is my my good friend Dave Arnold on the cover. He's one of the guys that came to the shop with the green bikes. And then, he got one of the red line frames. So if you look at what he's wearing, he's got like JT visor, JT Supercross face guard, JT pants, DG jersey, JT gloves or whatever. Everything's trick. It could be California, but it wasn't. It was Southport.
Where did he get all that from?
Well, from us, because we had all that stuff on the shelf.
No way.
So we already had an account with Serval Marketing, who were the JT importer. So we were like, yo, BMX pants. They're like, yeah, we've got some. No one's bought any here. Do you want some? So we already had. I mean, if you look at those pictures, the first pictures of us, I'm wearing like, Fox pants and whatever, Fox gloves or JT gloves. So we already had. And then, no disrespect to them, like the likes of, Ruffle, who turned up with these skateboard helmets and everything was all looked a bit like funky. And obviously those guys could ride, so there's no disrespect there. But they didn't have that access
to this cool
to all that stuff because we just had it already there. So we had those Simpson full face helmets or JT mouth guards and all that stuff, which was really difficult to get, but we already had it. So both in terms of the look and feel of how, factory we could look, and also, obviously not so much now, but then the skills between, well, maybe it is still the same today to an extent, but the skills being transferable from, motocross to bicycle motocross were quite direct.
Yeah.
So obviously I was, pretty fit. We weren't training or anything then in 1981, but in terms of, line selection and, things like that, and jumping and everything, it was bicycle and motocross. It was the same thing, really. So having done motocross and then moved to BMX, so I remember the last motocross race that I did, I bought a brand new bike in 1981, YZ125, the first year of the water-cooled bikes, and we did a race at a place called Adbaston, and the season used to start in February. I mean, races are cancelled now in April, motocross, the vintage stuff, because it's waterlogged. Season started in February. And I remember doing that race and we got the bike, but my dad's like, well, what are you doing? Are you doing BMX? Are you doing motocross? And I'm like, well, I think I'm going to do BMX. And then the race came and I was like, yeah, I want to race. And he's like, well, we've got no bikes left. We'd bought a few bikes to sell. I think we used to get them through another Yamaha dealer and then sell them on.
Yeah.
So I had to borrow the bike off a customer. And I was in the expert class, which is the oldest class. And he was in the seniors. Yeah. So basically he did his race and then I jumped on his bike and then did my race and predictably ran out of petrol. And Craig Burrows came with me, who was in the team on Robinson, and I remember him putting the bike back up to the paddock and I'm like, yeah, we should have put some petrol in between the races. Do you know what I mean? And that's the last, motocross race that I did. And that was February 1981. And then after that, it was just like,
all BMX.
I kind of regret, I loved motocross, but obviously, even just having told you that story of going over there and meeting Chuck and all that. I mean, that year, 1981, we must have been 4 or 5 times after that.
And do you think BMX, because you had the access to all that, and it was new, do you think it was just a bit more exciting than the motocross, or what do you think it was?
Well, it was new.
Yeah.
Like when anything is new, it's just, you get that butterflies in your stomach, don't you?
Yeah.
You just don't really know what's going to happen. It's like, it's so exciting, We've all had that experience of being there, yourself in the early days of downhill, perhaps.
Yeah.
It's like, it isn't cast in stone yet, is it?
No.
The best riders aren't, it isn't all regimented. It's all a little bit like just throwing it up in the air.
Yeah.
And that is so exciting. So I can't really stress how exciting BMX was. And for us to go to California and to see how organized and how amazing it was there. Because for us, and BMX has unfortunately had to live with this thing of being like inferior to other sports for so many years, hasn't it? Like being this kid's bike and like a kid's sport. And this is why, for me, it's so important for us to have like the Hall of Fame and to see, that connection between, what we did then and, Kai White and Beth Shriver and all that stuff like today, and to see that lineage and to see it grow through, my era and then into Dylan Clayton and, Jamie Staff and onwards throughout the years. That's amazing. And I would say it's only in the last few years that BMX has really got the recognition that it deserves, because it's really where everybody learns core skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's mountain bike or even road. I remember when Mike Pardon was over here and he was involved in the British Cycling BMX program in the very early days. They were like, yeah, we need to get the road riders onto a BMX track, because if you can do that, that's where all the skills develop. And you wouldn't think there'd be a relation between, road and track and BMX, but there is. And even with moto, to see Connor Fields training motocross riders.
Yeah.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, Brian
because BMX was always seen to be this because BMX was, let's not forget it, when Scott Brythout, bless his soul, first did those races in Southern California, it was literally the kids replicating, Bob Hanna or whoever it was, do you know what I mean? Replicating the motorcycle riders.
Yeah.
And so it's taken a long time for it to be able to, 40, 50 or more years for it to be able to develop to the point where it's now respected as what it was. So looking back, and and Tim March would probably agree with me, because Tim was a year behind us, so he was still doing motocross when that year that I was like, I'm going to do BMX. Tim had done some races, but he was like, now I'm going to stick to motocross. And I think what was probably going through his mind was the same as mine, was like, yeah, it's a bit of a it's, it's not at the same level that the motocross is at. It's less serious, but because I know Tim had been to California as well, but I think once we saw it there in California and how big the industry was, and we weren't thinking of this being like a business opportunity, we had, I have no idea how we ever used to be able to like do stuff. Now, because you've got all the reporting and everything, what you owe suppliers and what you've got coming in, your budgets and all that. Budgets, like, I have no idea. For the whole of the 80s, I have no idea how we ever afforded to do anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had the support of my parents, but they didn't really have any savings. The money just came from the business. But like, I know we were talking about this before with like the Mirage number plates. So we were importing the Wizard number plates, and we were like, they were expensive. So we just made our own.
Yeah.
We made the Lexan plate that you've got behind you there.
Yeah.
We sold 10,000 of those, Nige.
10,000. That's crazy, isn't it?
We sold 10,000 of those. So all handmade.
Yeah.
I was just talking to John Lee this morning about them. And, even the studs, we didn't have a press for those. We used to use a hammer. Later, for that plate, the newer one, we had a press. But talking about doing some more plates, and I was like, they're too hard to do them now. You wouldn't even get the people to be able to like supply all the stuff. Sorry, I've knackered it up for you there, haven't I?
It's all right. I get it. It fell down the couch before.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, that was, it's all a mystery. And I remember in 81, Chuck Robinson came over here, and there are those photographs that he took like the one of me and my dad in like Redditch or whatever, and the ones at the track with Gary Ellis and all that. And we went, oh, we're going to Southport to the skate park, to that place where we took those photographs that you didn't like. And we just got in the van and we all went. We had like a coach type thing.
Yeah.
And we just, like, who was running the business? Who was at the shop?
Guess it didn't matter, did it? Because
it didn't matter. So there was never, and I suppose there's a bit of a moral here, really. It's I think first and foremost, you've got to do what you love, and if you do what you love, and obviously I imagine that you've been thinking a little bit about this over the last few months, which everything's happened with your situation, Nige.
Yeah.
It'll work out, man.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You don't get too, I know nowadays everybody wants a business plan and they want projections and they want spreadsheets and they want all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we did have spreadsheets then, would you believe? But what is so important is that you're doing what you love, and if it doesn't work, you've still done what you've loved. And this also, I was talking to Dave Arnold about this just recently, because Dave's done loads and loads of creative projects that have, how can I put it, that he hasn't really been financially remunerated for. Like a lot of going down just to make a great event, or to make with his band, the Stags, one of the bands that he's in, they're doing a gig, down south somewhere, I don't know, Brighton or Margate or somewhere hip, I imagine. And it's an undersea theme. And he said he spent 80 hours making a deep sea diver's helmet. His mum's like, what are you doing with that? You're going to put it on eBay? He's like, how can... It's £10 an hour. I couldn't even. So these are these things that nowadays, that this is why companies, again, no parallel between any connection that you may have had with any companies in the last few years, but this is why, sometimes companies fail. Either they get too big, or the people there at the center of it, they aren't the people that like really, really, really love the sport. Sometimes they are, but the reality of it is, we both know this. You can't buy passion. No. You cannot buy passion. And this is the same thing that I've learned from being ill and being in hospital. These people in the NHS, these support workers, for example, they're goddamn amazing. You couldn't pay them if you got somebody, and I'm going to pay you 150 grand a year to be able to do whatever they do, like fill up the water by the side of your bed and change your sheets and do all this other really, really important stuff, and really get a lot of shit for it at times as well. Stuff I've been in there. You couldn't recruit someone to do that and to have that care.
No,
you just couldn't. And this is the same passion, that we have, for bikes.
Yeah.
And it shows. And obviously, we're hoping that there'll be, this Venn diagram that intersects, that there's this bit in the middle that makes us be able to put food on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, companies can start off, great. When I first started running the race team for Chain Reaction Cycles, it was still a family-run business, even though it was big. And those people were fantastic. They'd do anything to help me do what I was doing. But then when it gets to a certain point and big investors come in and that they haven't got the passion that we have, then that's when it all goes wrong.
Yeah. So it's a it's a tough one. So anyone out there thinking of, but the circumstances aren't the same now. The rules of the game have changed. And even when we moved to the property that we're at now in Wigan, I couldn't borrow that money now.
No.
Because that was 2007, so that was before like the first kind of crash in 2008.
Yeah.
They were ringing you up all the time. Do you want to borrow more money? Do you want?
Yeah.
Do you need any more loans for anything? Do you need a van? Do you need?
Yeah.
But now, unless, even if you've got the collateral to be able to put in, they're just not doing that, and that is really sad. And that brings me on to just really very briefly, I'll touch upon it, why it's so important for us to be able to support, other shops, not just BMX shops or just bike shops, but, or, cafes or restaurants or wherever you choose to be able to spend your money. And I know, I'm in a, I don't dispute that I'm, and and this is the thing, isn't it? We are part of the 1%, Nige.
Mm.
Not the 1% of like billionaires, unfortunately, but we are the 1% in, here in the West who are, rich enough to be able to do, buy an iPhone or buy a laptop or buy these things, because the other 99% of the world can't afford to be able to do that. So I do want to say, I will acknowledge that I'm in a privileged position because I can afford to go and buy bread from the Windy Arbor Lagan Bakery at the Windy Arbor Farm Shop up at the end of Winstanley Road.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone that's just got to go to Lidl. And I'm sure Lidl sourdoughs, I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's great. But maybe even better.
Yeah.
But for me to be able to support an independent business,
we like to do that too.
It's so important, and in a way that's really why, again, that's really why we're in this situation whereby the big get bigger and the smaller just get shat on. That's the reason why there used to be 30 independent bricks and mortar BMX shops in this country, and now there's only 4.
Yeah, it's sad.
You know what I mean? And
I'm hoping with everything that's going on, it'll go back to the small businesses. That's just what I hope. I'm not saying it probably won't, but that would be nice. If some of these smaller bike brands can survive, and these massive bike brands are not going to kill everybody off.
I mean, there's so many challenges in the industry that I'm sure you're probably more familiar with than me, just living in kind of a BMX world. The whole way of doing things, with direct to market, Canyon and YT and things like that. It's just been an absolute game changer, hasn't it? So trying to keep bricks and mortar shops going, it's it's difficult. And obviously the problems that we've got at the moment are oversupply post COVID, and we've still got another, I think, when we realized, I mean, for those people that aren't in the industry and maybe haven't seen what's happened, is when it was COVID, everybody bought a bike or bought 2 bikes. And then the shops had no bikes left to sell. The distributors had no bikes left to sell. The Far East, Taiwan and China couldn't make the stuff fast enough. And then obviously the factories were short because of COVID. And then this left a backlog. And then the way the system works is the distributors, let's just say, I don't know, GT, for example, they'll then send out an order form to all the dealers. How many bikes do you want? And then obviously everyone's like, this time next year, we'll all be millionaires. So like, instead of ordering, I don't know, 50 bikes, shops are ordering like 500 bikes. And then, GT go back to the vendor in Taiwan and say, yo, we want 500,000 bikes. I don't know what the figures are.
Yeah.
Give or take zeros, I don't know. And then the factories go ahead and make that stuff. And then predictably, good old capitalism bites us on the ass again. The bikes start to deliver, and obviously the demand has gone down because obviously, we sold nearly 2 years worth of bikes in a 6-month period.
Yeah.
So what's that going to do with going forward? You're not going to keep buying a new bike, are you? Whether it's a full suspension bike or an e-bike or whatever it is, you're not just keep.
No.
Normal people, Nige, we forget this. They don't buy a new bike every year.
No. No.
And yeah, so this has now left us in this situation. And I was talking to the shipping company recently. Not only did people, I mean, you couldn't get cars. Oh, we had a new car in order and we couldn't
Yeah.
get it because one of the superconductor chip,
Yeah.
they couldn't get it. So the car sat there for like 6 months while they were waiting for like this
Yeah.
bit. I was literally like, tell us what it is and I'll go on Alibaba and try and get it.
Yeah.
Other Chinese internet sites are available. So yeah, it was mad. But they also, you might not know this, I didn't. They built ships because the containers. So basically shipping a container, it was like 1,500 quid, and then it was 15 grand. So it went up 10 times, and obviously,
I heard that.
Once you've then sold those bikes into the dealers at that, and the customer, you've set the retail price of a bike at like a mountain bike with a RockShox fork on it, 1x12, let's say $999, $1,000 for that bike. Like the price of a good entry-level mountain bike, let's say. You can't put it up to 1,500 quid.
No.
It's still got to be so that into everybody's margins. And then even worse, the bikes finally came. And then obviously the dealers were like, yeah, I don't need that now, mate.
Yeah. So
cancelled orders everywhere. And going back to the shipping thing, they built ships, loads and loads and loads of ships, because they were like, you can go online, can't you, and, track all these ships, and they're everywhere, container shipping all over the world. And don't start me on the evils of containerization. Tell me not to go there. If I start talking about containerization, just press pause. Okay. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I promise. Yeah. So he's like, there's these like shipyards in like India, and they've got like 50 like half-built ships. Absolute flipping madness. Yeah. So I think at the time we thought by 2023, all this surplus stock would be. I mean, there was a brand recently that, were heavily. I mean, every brand. I mean, even Santa Cruz. That's a premium mountain bike brand, isn't it? Probably the premium mountain bike brand, you might say, arguably. Just look at the prices of the bikes, man. Even the e-bikes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bonkers. I mean, somebody told me that who kind of worked at that brand or one of those brands, they had a buddy who was like, oh, I want to get an e-bike like thing. Can you sort me a price out? This being in the industry, this happens, doesn't it? And he was like, yeah, okay, I'll sort your price out. Sent him a price. The guy's like, you're joking, aren't you? I can get one from, insert a name of a independent mountain bike retailer here. Yeah. And it was like 500 quid less and interest-free finance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, how we're going to dig ourselves. Sorry, I've gone down a rabbit hole there, but I did avoid the containerization thing. But it's
in a mess at the moment.
Yeah, but going forward, maybe, we're hoping that, but if people were making, I mean, it's like the talker frames, which I'm sure we'll come on to, Bill didn't make that many, 25 of one, 50 of mo, and they've all gone.
Yeah.
And, they're in, they're out, ka-ching, they're in the marketplace. Hopefully enough keen people will have got them. Obviously, people that didn't won't be happy, but that's much better. But those bikes will then keep their value going forward. Yeah. And the whole thing, I'll tell you now, the whole thing wasn't intentional. Bill Ryan had so many different models. You just add them up and you're like, we're not talking about a couple of £1,000 here, are we? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it was a lot of money to be able to make, the Freestylist and the Freestylist 29er and then the Pro X and all these different models. I mean, it was a lot to take on, but he's pulled it off. But it's maybe we need to get back to more of resetting the supply and demand rather than going, let's, get a 40-foot container full of whatever, and, then putting it into the marketplace. And I remember being at a distributor in, I won't say who they are, but they were in Poole in Dorset. So you might be able to guess who. And the director at the time said that their plan was a 25% year-on-year growth. Now, I'm not an economist, but that's some unsustainable shit right there, isn't it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And that in conjunction with to yeah, so that in conjunction with what happened with COVID. But even BMX is, and BMX is at the bottom of the, I imagine BMX is at the bottom of the food, with e-bikes at the top and BMX bikes probably at the bottom of the food chain. But so many brands haven't even done a model year, 24 model year, because of the amount of stock left. And I said that in a negative way, but and anybody watching this might know, we had some good deals from a particular well-known BMX brand, prior to Christmas. And, we got some stick over supporting that, to be honest with you. But ultimately, the bikes were in this country, they were going to end up somewhere.
Yeah.
If they didn't go to us, they would have gone to somewhere else where the money wouldn't go back into BMX.
Yeah.
We actually used the money from that to be able to buy the talkers, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, so, and also it put a lot of kids onto BMX bikes at Christmas that might have got my bikes.
Yeah.
So trying to look at it from the bigger, picture. But is that enough of a rabbit hole?
Yeah, no, but it's all interesting stuff. Obviously, we could talk about all of this for days, but no, it's all relevant. But let's go just so we can go back a little bit. So obviously, you started the race team off with the Robinsons, and then you introduced Talker. You had a race team. I first heard about. Obviously, I'm a little bit younger than you, so I was a bit behind. I first got. Well, first of all, what year did your dad build the track in Three Sisters, and how did that come about?
Well, we had before that, and after that, really, we had the. And again, these are just bizarre, aren't they? How did we connect with John Lee and his dad Peter at the quarry in Charlie? How? Because now you just go and type in BMX, don't you? You can go to Google Maps. Like I can go to Google Maps and say we're going somewhere, and I can type in like vegan, and then all the vegan restaurants will pop up, won't they? Do you know what I mean? And then you can look, and then you check the reviews, and then you couldn't type in BMX then, and I mean, so I don't even know how we connected. So we basically,
I think it was just word of mouth, wasn't it? Like somebody said something, and then you found out somehow.
Yeah, I mean, and there must have been a lot of. There wasn't any LinkedIn then, was there, for business?
No.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how we contacted John and his dad, but we went up there and in the quarry built the track there. But I think we wanted a track more locally. We never fell out with them. Everything was always cool. And
so, what year was that then, Alan?
well, that was 81.
Okay.
I think that first year. If you get those BMX news or the early paper BMX weeklies, and every week there's coverage of like Charlie Super Shoot in there, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? So I'm guessing, I don't even know. We must have we were speaking to the Wigan Council about doing something here throughout 1981. I think the track probably opened in 82. So that was adjacent to the industrial estate there at Three Sisters, which is still there now. And it was part of Three Sisters recreation area where they had the karting circuits there now, which is leased by, was it leased by Aintree? I don't know if it still is. And they had other things on there as well, didn't they? Like, fishing maybe and other things.
Yeah.
So they said, oh, this will be good to have, the BMX track here. So, and again, we didn't get, Clark and Kent to come down and build a track. We were just like, my dad used to be involved in haulage, and they used to do some stuff with like bulldozers. I'm not sure what really. But anyway, he knew his way around a bulldozer, didn't he? And this guy that used to work for him my dad rang him and said, "Oh, Jimmy, are you still on the dozers?" Oh, the drots. They used to call them drots. Have you ever heard
Right.
that term? Are
No.
you still on the drots? And he was like, "Oh, I'm not. No, I'm retired now." And he's like, "Oh, can you get us a drop for like a week?" So basically, we went down to Three Sisters, and we looked at different areas. And I remember being there, looking at these different places, and where the track was built, we just marked it out, with some pieces of wood and some string, maybe.
Yeah.
And we went, "Oh, turn left here." We didn't have like a draft of a track. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know. It even came out that good. And then my dad had this guy who used to work for him come down with the dozer and get some dirt, and we built the track. So there was no, it wasn't. We had to apply for funding and get match funding and go to British Cycling and all this, SRB areas, and it's so difficult, isn't it, to get anything done
Yeah.
or made now. We had to go at trying to get the track or our track built there maybe 10 or 15 years ago between me and Carl Sanderson and a few others.
Yeah.
And the amount of, Paddy Sharrock's mum was involved, and the amount of, yeah, we just couldn't get it done.
Mm.
I mean, in the end, they were like, I think there was some land opposite Glaxo Smith Kline that they owned, and they were like, yeah, we'll lease it. It's like 10 grand a year.
Mm.
So you need a load of, I mean, if you're building a pump track, I don't know what pump tracks cost.
Crazy money.
Big grand, I don't know. But anyway, so we built this track for like, I guess nothing. Maybe the council got us the dirt, but the track was built for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like literally, my dad must have paid his mate Jimmy to for the draught, for the
Yeah.
height, and I think we just paid for it.
Yeah.
Because obviously it'd be good for us if we had a BMX track.
Yeah.
And I didn't want a U inside a U.
Yeah.
Traditional, and it was a U inside a U, wasn't it? If you think about it, but like, it wasn't like a hairpin first turn like Redditch or something. So
Yeah.
it was a 90-degree first
Yeah.
corner. So that was quite important because I always felt that having a hairpin first turn in the BMX track was like, it just killed the speed, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, if you look at tracks nowadays, they're like variations on that cookie cutter design, really. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess that opened in 82 and we had a national there.
So your first national was in 82?
Yeah, because I've got that picture, man. I might not have sent it to you actually. I mean, bad day. Brings back flashbacks. It's the picture of me and Tim Mards coming around the first corner. And it must be like later on in the day because it's flash photography. And you can see me and Craig Burrows and Tim. And I led, down the start straight, over the whoops, over the Kong. And then Tim just came on the inside of me into that hairpin and just lifted me with his elbow, and I lost the front end. And
So was King Kong on the original track? No.
no, that was a pro section that we built afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just a single thing, and then we wanted to build a bigger jump. And so, yeah, we built that. I mean, it was a bit of a weird one, really, wasn't it? Because you weren't jumping up that high because you pedaled up it.
Yeah.
And it was just a normal set of,
Yeah.
it was just a normal set of doubles when you got there.
Yeah.
But because of the whole height of it.
Yeah, it looked huge.
Yeah. Chris Wellsby, shout out to Chris, who's now in UAE on Talker. He's the first person that jumped it. And we hadn't really put the surface on yet. And we were like, no, patting it down like this to try and make it rideable. And we're like, who's going to jump it first? Because like, we were like, it'll be historical and you'll be the first person. You'll have a blue plaque. It'll be a blue plaque here saying that you were the first person jumping. Chris, like, I'm jumping it. So came cranking, whether it came from the start hill, I don't know. But round the left-hand berm.
Yeah.
And then up the jump, of course, his front wheel just dug in, didn't it? And it was just a total slow motion. I think he probably cleared the jump like just with his head. But he was pretty, yeah, no surface on the. But yeah, that was a good track, and I built some good tracks. To be honest, I did that, and I did Whitehaven because my
Yeah.
sister was in my sister Lynn was in Whitehaven. She
That
goes,
had a big set of doubles as well on the second straight.
yeah, and one of the best things I ever did. I don't know if you remember, like the first corner, the second corner, you had angled whoops.
Yeah.
So like you could go on the inside and you could
Yeah.
jump,
Yeah.
or you could go all the way around the outside and miss them out.
Miss them out.
Or it was actually 4 lines. You could like hit the
Go
first
over one.
then go out, or you could go wide and cut in.
Yeah.
So that was one of the and of course that was a naturally downhill track. That was a good track too. And Birmingham Wheels. And I know there was input because I've said, oh, I've designed Birmingham Wheel track, and like, a few people are like, no, you fucking didn't. But yeah, so I did go down there and meet with Chris from the Wheels Project, and at least gave them some direction and some input. I'm not saying that other people weren't involved. Yeah. So if I upset anybody by saying, "Oh, I came down, I designed the track," I wasn't involved. Me and Mike Pardon went down. So we marked the track out, told him what we wanted. He said, "How wide do you want to start?" I'm like, "Well, how wide can we have it?"
Yeah.
Used to always bug me with BMX. Is like it was just too narrow at the start,
yeah.
And someone would come out the gate and they come over on you. Even now, even if watching like I don't know, fucking Zolder or wherever they have these races, New Zealand or wherever the hell they are.
Yeah.
You come out the gate and you elbow or your handlebar goes in front of somebody. They're screwed. That's it. Race over, man.
Yeah.
So Chris said, "How wide do you want it?" I'm like, fucking twice as wide as normal. Can we have it twice as wide as normal? He's like, sure. I'm like, sick.
It was huge.
So we made the start, all the start, and that was definitely my idea. Don't care what anybody says. So it was super wide. And you come out the gate and you weren't going to be worried about like elbow, who was the fastest, got down. And then, then he had that massive drop off.
Yeah.
That was a sick track. I've never seen as many frames broken as on that track.
On that drop off?
Well, not so much there. Then you come out the corner, Terry Lloyd broke his wrist there. And then you went onto that long straight, and those whoops there, that snapped head tubes, a go-go.
Yeah.
Honestly, so many people coming back with like the forks and the front wheel in one hand and the frame in the other hand.
Yeah.
Because you jump it and like there was so much, you were carrying so much speed. That was but again, so it's so funny, isn't it? Like people design tracks and like they make a lot of money. That's what they do. Great. Brilliant. I went to Birmingham Wheels in my Austin 1750 with Mike Pardon.
Yeah.
We got there and they had Birmingham Wheels project was like funded by the probation service or something. So they had money to keep kids out of trouble type of thing. And they bought a color photocopier. This is like early 80s. It was 30 grand.
30 grand.
So anyway, and he's like, oh, and I never thought to like go, I'll help you design the track and I'll put my invoice in. I was just like, you didn't give a shit, did you? Somebody wanted a track. If anyone said to me, can you come and help me design a track in like, I don't know, wherever, Elgin or so, I'd just go, yeah, sick, I'll come up there. I'd pay my own fuel.
Yeah.
It was for the good of BMX, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's all changed now.
That's why I'm in Wigan, not in like
Laguna,
south of France. That's why I'm not in Mauritius as we speak. Yeah, I'm in Mauritius. Yeah, but me and Mike Padden drove down there. I didn't have enough money to be able to get home, so I'm like, Chris, man, I'm like so sorry. Can you sub me a $5
to get
home with fuel? So, I don't, we don't.
Even though we got a 30 grand photocopier.
He got me £5 note out of the petty cash and gave me that. And we had to drive home doing 50 miles an hour to maybe make it stretch. If Mike sees this, that is true. And the Isle of Man, we built the Isle of Man track too. The one
I went to that one too.
So that was, I went twice. I went with Ruffle once, and me and Mike went, I won't go into that because it was quite a funny story, but I'll leave it for another time. Part 2. Yeah, so that was a good track, wasn't it? It was a bit uphill, wasn't it, toward the finish? But apart from, but that's just because of where the track was. I couldn't do anything about. That wasn't my fault. Sorry if anyone didn't like that part of the track.
No, it was because the second straight was like downhill, wasn't it? And then it did a 180 and then went back uphill a bit.
Yeah.
But no, all good tracks and and different layouts, which I think is really good because doing the same sort of layout is boring, isn't it?
I mean, I think all the tracks that I did, like Kirby. Do you ever go to Kirby? I built Kirby.
Loved Kirby.
Um, maybe some others. I don't know.
Kirby was great. That was funny story about Kirby because my dad worked for AC Delco in Kirby, so he worked there for like 35 years or whatever. But I remember the first race meeting at Kirby, and my dad said, "Well, I won't park here because everyone's parking here." And the first I think it must have been a club meeting or something like that. And when we left, every single car window had been put through and all the stereos had been robbed. And and obviously my dad knew Kirby, so he knew not to park where everyone else had, right outside the new track.
But I remember it was like, again, it wasn't a hairpin first turn, was it? Like it was a 90-degree first corner.
And then 90-degree again.
Yeah, yeah. I remember it was after I stopped racing, and I was there, and who was there now? Can't remember. I can't remember his name now. Who was the
Riders.
Yeah, from Liverpool?
Flammo or Pete Power?
Flemdog. Oh my God, I cannot remember Flemdog. So Flemdog's, and I remember going down the straight with him and pulling him on the straight, and he's like, "Oh, you've still got a start in you?" I'm like, "Yeah."
And Flemmo always had a lot of power.
Yeah, no, he was like, fair dues, like, I said, I'm not raced for like 3 years or something. Do you know what I mean? But that was quite a that was quite a good. We trained there as well, me and John Lee and Tony Holland in '85 when we were first on Talker.
So
We used to
what
go,
hap-
and
what
the guy
happened?
from like the leisure centre, and he was like a top cyclist. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. And
Yeah,
he put together like a circuit training program for us. So
yeah.
we used to go every week,
On
and
the concrete velodrome.
no, in the gym, just
Oh,
like
in the
lifting
gym.
weights and doing whatever he told us. So he put together this pro, and for John to come from Chorley all the way down there to Liverpool, he was Kirby. It was quite a trek, but he was good. He was really good to us. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name.
Yeah. And so obviously, yeah, just going back. So you had the Robins. You were bringing the Robinsons in. When did you start bringing the Talkers in?
Well, that was '81. So we went go to California in '81. We
Yeah,
were like, Chuck, we need a cheaper bike. Oh, we'll go see Steve Johnson. We got a bike and a jersey and pants from Mike,
yeah.
and went to Partington. There's a picture in BMX News, isn't there? Talker for pardon. There's a picture of me and Dave Arnold where we've just come back from California, and I've got a trophy and whatever in the picture. And so then we must have ordered some bikes, and then after Mike, then we had a team, which was like Melanie, my niece, Sean Godbold, and Scott Barber.
Okay.
So we had a talker team, as well. And I think that first year,
And that was in 82 or 81?
that's 81. That
81.
first year, I looked at this. I'll just see if I can. I've not been able to find anything, have I, to add on to anything that I'm saying so far. You came in 1981 standings. So in 1981, according to the British BMX Hall of Fame, the national champions in 1981, 16 plus me, 15 Andy Ruffle, 14 Nicky Matthews, 13 Brian Jones, who didn't ride for us but was from Hindley, where we were from.
I've met him in the last 10 years. I didn't know him when I was younger.
Oh, really? Right. Yeah, no, he's a good lad. A really strong rider. 12, Chris Young, who didn't ride for us then, but then rode for us just after. In fact, I think he did ride for us in '81. No, Chris did ride for us in 81. Jeremy Gradwell, Scott Barber, Darren Mills, Mark Pete. So in that first year, 16 plus me, Alan's Robinson.
Yeah.
13, well, we won't count him, but that was Branger. 12, Chris Young, Alan's talker. 10-year-old age group, number 1, Scott Barber, Alan's talker. 9, Darren Mills, didn't ride for us on Robinson, but rode a Robinson.
Yeah.
And his dad used to have a setup where we used to kind of sell stuff he was from the East Coast. So, and he's also on the cover of that magazine, the book, Riders Ready, Pedals Ready, Go, by Jeff Barraclough.
Yeah.
And 8, Matt Oakley, rode for Rally later.
I remember that.
7, Mark Pete, Alan's Robinson. So out of all those age groups, and this is males, there's only 2 classes for female. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the riders rode for us in the first year and were national champion.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Which I hadn't realized that until I looked at it when I was doing that research for the talker stuff just recently. And you never really, mad. And how we got those riders from further afield, like Scott Barber was from Ipswich.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then, Scott rode for us for a few years. And I think one of the pictures I sent you is that the great photograph as we're visiting the Amy factory and we've all got the Amy hats on.
Yeah.
And Scott and his dad came with us for that. So
brilliant.
Yeah. So yeah, that was Talker. So yeah, Talker was like, it was, that was all go. And again, having the help of Steve at that time was amazing. So we'd stay at, we'd go over, me and Tony Holland would go stay at Steve Johnson's apartment. He lived in Fullerton nearby where the factory was, and then Mike Miranda and Tommy Brackens lived nearby when they joined Talker in 1984. So them years
they joined, did they?
Yeah, well, Brackens first, and then Mike, soon after, because they were good friends, and they had an apartment together. So we were lucky to get the Talker thing, and me and Tony we were going to Knott's Berry Farm amusement park in Southern California, and I remember him being in his van and Steve dropping us off and goes, I'll drop you off if you like, and I'll pick you up later. I've got a meeting with Bob Harrow. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't think anything about it. So we went on all the stuff. In fact, I hardly did because I didn't like it. They had Montezuma's Revenge. Do you remember Montezuma? I didn't like any of that shit. So Tony went on it, and I was just like, roller coaster. And then Steve came back and picked us up, and I said, oh, how did it go, the meeting with Bob? And he's like, good. Do you mind if I ask, what it was about? And he's like, oh, he wants us to make frames. The Harrow Freestyler.
Yeah.
But although we were importing the Harrow plates then because Chuck introduced us, I never thought be a right good idea that getting those Harrow Freestyle frames. I bet there's still a few of them.
Yeah. You probably had enough going on.
It was just like, and then somebody else started, and I'm like, Talker's making them. Why aren't we? I look back and I'm like, but we were happy just to do, and all the years that we did Talker and Robinson, we just did Talker and Robinson.
Yeah.
If anyone else was running this as a business, like properly, they'd be like, we need CW, we need to add all these other, how business works, don't you? Do you know what I mean? You accumulate these.
But I wish it was more like that. I wish one business had one or two brands, other businesses had one or two brands. I think it's just shares it out and makes it a bit better,
100%, because obviously the reason why people are doing that is because they've got an eye on selling the thing down the line, haven't they? It's either got to be able to get more benefit for the shareholders, or they're just going to sell the whole thing to like a investment group, aren't they? That's what happens.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So I never thought to even do. I was like, oh, Harrow frames. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would be good that for somebody. I never And then obviously Haro became,
Yeah.
this is 1981. So by 1984, Haro was massive. Haro was one of the first companies that had complete bikes made in Japan by Anlon. And it was just, huge. China were doing it by then. And it became, an absolutely, a global brand as it is today, very, very quickly before Bob sold it in like 89.
89.
So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, that's the Talker thing, and the Talker thing was going great. And then we had a freestyle team, and then when it was Kellogg's, we had Terry and Andy, the freestyle team, and then after that, the other Andy and Julian, and then Terry and Andy Irwin, Terry Jenkins and Andy Irwin, we had a input into what became the freestylist frame, which we've had reissued just in 20-inch and 29-inch form. And and then they did hubs, they were starting to do cranks, they did bottom brackets. So they were developing the brand into going more into like high-end P&A, like Hutch, really.
Yeah.
Like with the pedals and the cranks, that was the example that there was that people were going from. And then we had trouble with Robin. Oh wow, yes. Oh yeah, I don't know. You can see those.
Well, these are
You can
actually the
see
ones.
those shins.
These are actually the ones that my dad used to make for Hutch.
Oh wow.
So yeah, my dad used to, because he was an engineer, he used to, I remember him coming home from work, and the cage would be a flat piece that he'd milled at work, and then he made a steel ball the exact size for Hutch pedals and one for Shimano, Suntour.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I remember he used to beat it round, and then he'd drill the holes and countersink them, and then he had a wheel, and he buffed them so they looked chrome, and then I wanted some red ones for some reason. But yeah, he used to make those with obviously the bigger spikes.
Yeah.
And I remember Flemo used to come and buy them, and a few other pros used to buy them. But can you imagine how long it took him to make those?
Well, you couldn't even get anyone to even have the skill to even do that now. It's just gone.
Well, my dad used to sell them for £8 to the pros.
The only way you could have them made is if you had someone do the CAD drawing and send it to Taiwan.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, because the thing was with them, the Hutch, well, two things. The teeth used to work
really
down,
quick,
and then the ends used to bash in.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, I'd go through 2 or 3 cages at least a year.
Yeah.
You used to just run through them. So that was Talker's idea, to be able to do more parts. And then obviously they got Tommy on board, and then Mike and Richie Anderson. And it was just all like, and on the other side of the coin, like Robinson, it was just like Chuck still couldn't get the frames made. We couldn't get any frames. And obviously Robinson was our like premier brand.
Yeah.
But we had no product to sell. And then obviously went to Rich Long to get the frames made there, but it was just bad. So I was just like, listen, I've had enough of this. We're better off just going all in on Talker.
So is that so? What? So in 80, obviously. So when I got into BMX racing, I think I did a race in the end of 82. I had an ultra burner. And then obviously I used to get the magazines and look in the magazines, see all the American brands. And then, I lived in Rainford, which wasn't a million miles away from where you guys were, but as a kid it's quite a long way away. Somebody had told us in our village, because we had our own little crew where we used to ride our BMXs with, and I think the first ever BMX I saw was a kid who was a year older than me, and his older brother, called Glenn and Scott Knowles, and they were the two kids that had these BMXs, and I'm pretty sure that one of them was a Talker, a black Talker with yellow parts on it, and that was the thing that I just saw and I thought, wow, what is that? And then, so I ended up getting a Huffy Pro Thunder from Rogerson's because that was the closest shop to where I lived in just the other side of Billinge.
But you got a little bit further.
Well, I didn't know. I had no idea. I just told my mum I wanted a BMX, and she took me there, and we got one. And then I think the summer after, I got an Ultra Burner from Kirby Market or something like that from a washing machine shop. And then somebody told me about this BMX track, which was your track in Three Sisters. So my dad took me and my mate, and we ended up racing. Like similar to your motorbike story, I had no idea what a BMX track was or racing. Never, I'd only razzed it around the village, and we used to build jumps, and then did a race there, and then somebody must have told me about your shop. So I remember my mum taking me to your shop and walked in downstairs, and I seen this Team Robinson bike. I'm pretty sure it must have been Tony Holland's because it had like UK 1 and 3/8 wheels on it and stuff, and had like blue and red Amy grips and blue and red parts, and it was insane. And then we went upstairs to the counter, and my mum said to you, I want to buy Robinson for my son because I'd heard that Robinson was the coolest bikes going. And then you spec me up a Robinson Expert with all blue parts on, and I got that for Christmas in '80. That would have been Christmas '82, and then my dad took me racing in the start of '83 at Three Sisters, and that was it. Raced every weekend till I was 17, I think. But coming to your place and seeing them Robinson bikes, they were just incredible. Like there was nothing, there wasn't anything better that we thought you could buy. And arguably there wasn't the team kit and the chrome bikes with the blue and red on. It was incredibly cool.
I mean, we were really lucky that we had that. And if you look at, the Robinson uniform or the Torque uniform or the CW uniform or the SE uniform,
Yeah,
man, that stuff was good. I mean, it's
still
like
good now.
it stood the test of time. And now if someone, this again better than me, you'd have like a team of designers, like 10 people involved in, maybe this is where it goes wrong, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, Troy Lee do a thing. How many people are involved, man? It's not just Troy anymore, is it? I mean, the whole, I mean, using SE as an example, I mean, Scott Brythout, wanted this kind of like light blue and brown and camo and create the whole brand, and then he had the bus with the turrets on the top.
Yeah.
And all that kind of like, the BMX3 helmet and all the wings. And I mean, it was like mega. Like, if you went to a marketing company now and you said that you wanted to create a new brand and you wanted to have, a unique look, I mean, they wouldn't speak to you unless it was like under 100 grand, right?
No.
If you wanted to create something that good,
yeah.
I mean, this stuff was like, no disrespect, and I'm not shitting on them or anything, like Monster or Red Bull or any of these other brands, that stuff eats shit compared to like that stuff then.
Yeah. Unreal.
I mean, it's great, and the Monster Claw thing, it's iconic and all that. But like, look at any of those pictures of the SE riders from. I mean, who would have thought to come up with like the best combo would be like a baby blue frame with like
brown
box. Like, remember, there's a picture. There's a BMX Plus cover, and I think the magazine was from 1980, and it's someone, and they're kind of doing the front wheels.
Yeah.
It's like sideways on, the front wheels turned away from the camera. And in the background, it must be somewhere like in the Pacific Northwest. There's all like, it looks like Twin Peaks scenery in the background, and everything about it, like the team product sticker and the whole, and the Bill Walters pants, the why we never really had them here, did we? With the big BW patch at the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah,
I mean, it's so good.
yeah,
And that was like Scott Brythout.
yeah,
He was just, oh, wait a minute, I'll invent BMX
yeah,
undisputably from scratch.
yeah,
And then for a laugh, I'll invent a brand that is like still, highly regarded and selling a lot of bikes. Still
yeah,
spoke to Todd Lyons actually this week,
yeah,
which is, reinvented itself for like,
yeah,
the times that we live in.
yeah.
It's astonishing that one person would be able to do that.
I know, it's
I mean, the
incredible.
closest things are probably Troy Lee or Mitch Payton at Pro Circuit.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Those people that have been involved in their businesses on the ground for a long, 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 long time. But
yeah,
even then, I'm sure that, well, certainly, Troy, and I don't know Mitch, but Mitch doesn't do all the graphics for the shirts, I'm sure. I mean, I know he still tunes cylinders and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But I just can't get my head around how good. And the same thing with like Robinson. You look at that kit, the red Urtex shirt, and
Incredible.
you should have brought some things to illustrate all this, with and then the blue, and then the light blue, the two light blue lines. I mean,
Incredible.
it stood out
Oh,
so much on the track. And
it,
that's what made it
incredible.
like so desirable, because the bikes were chrome moly and the geometry was near. They were same as everybody else's bike, really. But the whole,
Oh, the look. Yeah,
yeah, the look and feel of it was it was unsurpassed. And to think these were the brainchild of like the one person that ran the company,
yeah,
and that one person had to, like, if you think of Steve Johnson at Talker, he had to be involved in everything. I mean,
yeah.
like everything, like the look and feel of the jerseys. And I remember, like, there's a famous picture of Tommy Brackens and Mike Miranda, and they were in just the white jersey before he had the black top, and they've got like around the neck here, there's like a little yellow bit, and it says Talker. I remember
Mm,
Steve saying to me, the reason we've done that, if there's ever a headshot of the
yeah,
riders in the magazines, that's the bit that always gets seen.
yeah,
So the brand is always cut off
yeah,
because you just see it from here. So they
yeah.
come up with this idea. And who's even done that now?
I know.
No one does that.
Yeah, I mean,
If
I
anyone's
know
watching that, if anyone's watching this, and then in a year's time,
you've done it.
you've done it, like you owe someone some money. I'm not sure who.
I'm getting a jersey designed at the moment. I might add that in, Alan.
Well, 12 and a
Um,
half percent, 12.5%. That's my final offer.
um, so yeah, I mean, in saying things, and what I liked about that era is like, you just looked on the gate, and you could, from the uniform, you could tell what bike you rode. And that's what I really like and miss now. Even World Cup downhill now. You've got the Specialized Gravity team, for instance, with Bruni and Finals and um, Jordan Williams now. Obviously, Specialized is a huge brand, but every week they've got a different kit on, and it's really like low key, and it's got the big S on, but I don't know. I just think it's missing that what early BMX had. I like to
It doesn't have
like
to be.
what
It doesn't have to be retro. It
no,
just needs to be. I mean, some colors, go together.
yeah,
I remember Steve talking to me a lot about this, about how the eyes work.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I mean, that contrast with the black and the yellow,
yeah,
you can just really see it on the track.
yeah,
And ultimately that maybe people have come away from that now because they have got the energy drink sponsors and everything else. And even if you look, and then to tie it all in, I mean, if you look at a similar story to this is like talking of Mitch Payton, when they first did the Peak Honda team with Jeremy McGrath and Jeremy Buell and Brian Swink, etc., in 1991, when they were the first satellite new satellite motocross team. And of course, the first team that ever did this was Fox, really.
Yeah.
In 1977 with Pat Richard. And he was on the RM125 with the water-cooled kit and the Fox air shocks and the aluminium swing arm and all that. So it has got that parallel in other sports, and and obviously Fox still use that. The head is still effectively, that is their flag bearing logo to this day, and it's from 1974.
Yeah.
So
Still looks amazing.
good design endures, and the SE logo, the SE bubble logo, whether it says SE bikes or SE bicycle or BMX racing or whatever, that it does endure, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Hey,
But I don't know why companies are shying away from using that corporate identity, because that is so it's so important. And I've watched a few of the those the World Cup events, the one that they had in New Zealand and the one they had in Australia.
Hardline.
No, BMX racing.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Australia and New Zealand, and you look at the shirts and you're just like,
yeah.
And I know people, if they're with the national body like Kai White, they've got to wear the BC shirt with that most offensive, logo. Won't discuss it. Won't discuss it here. It's not time and place, Nige. That most offensive logo here on the shoulder.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit stuck. But you see some of that, and it's just like logos plastered like anyone. If you just got like, we've got this blank shirt, and now it's so easy, as to get stuff done digitally. You can get it. I mean, this is the reason maybe Specialized. You can get a shirt done for the weekend. You can just say, yeah, I want 20 shirts for this weekend, and there's the template. There are the logos. Slap them all on. It's too easy to do. But back then, it either had to be screen printed, or in Talker's case, they were one of the first places that had a heat press.
Yeah.
So all those white Talker jerseys from the Eddie King era until they had the sublimated shirts in 1984, the Mike Miranda, Tommy Bracken's era, they were all heat press. So they couldn't make them up like that. But, typically it was screen printed. So you had to pay for the screen, and everything was expensive, wasn't it, to be able to do so? You couldn't just say, I'm going to make 20 shirts for this weekend and Hot Shop and make them or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's RSD or whoever do them here nowadays. It was a lot more difficult. So we've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole there, but I guess in summary, these people at the beginning of BMX, they not just only one person or two people or three people, two people in the case of GT, they created these logos, these brands, all this thing, and all the hardware and everything as well. And I'm not disputing that they did have people, engineers and different people on the ground, doing that stuff, but the vision and the brands came from one person.
Yeah, no,
it blows me away that and now here we are with all the technology that we have, and we can't come close to an SE logo.
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons is, and just from my experience trying to get team jerseys designed over the last few years, is when there's too many people involved, it just becomes a nightmare and it takes too long, and then you end up just one person wants one thing, one person wants another, and you just end up going, you're that over it by that point. You just go, oh yeah, okay, we'll do that. Well, whereas if it's just you and somebody else, you can really nail down exactly what you want.
Yeah, no, definitely. But you've got to have that good idea in the first place, haven't you?
Yeah, for sure.
I've been involved in a couple of creative projects recently, and the magic number's 3, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes if there's just one of you, sometimes I'll do something and they'll be like, someone say, and I'll go, oh yeah, what am I thinking? I mean, we were doing something recently involved in a record with Dave Arnold again in the band that he was in, and we're not reissuing, we remastered and reformatted an album that we put out, because I had a record label in 1980, whenever it was, 1989. And we were talking about the title, and I just came up with this title, and I'm like, yeah, that is amazing. And then Dave said to me, that's not the band, is it? Like, you're just thinking too highbrow there. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's total bullshit. Stop me. So sometimes you just go down this route of like wanting to please yourself, don't you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it goes away from what it should be. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm an idiot. Sorry. And then we ended up with something that was a little bit like that, but was more in keeping. So sometimes having too much free reign, if you're not a genius, which I'm not, can be dangerous, can't it?
No, yeah, sure. Okay, guys, we're going to have to call it a night, and we're going to have to do a part 2 because there's way too much interesting stuff that Alan's talking about. So I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of the Alan Woods podcast. Please like, subscribe, and do all that stuff. It keeps us going. And please join us back next week for part 2. Thanks very much. Stay on your bike.